The acrid scent of curing concrete and the distant clang of steel girders are the true perfume of my existence. I'm Julian Thorne, a man forged in the crucible of ambition, now 34 years old. And for more than a decade, I poured every fiber of my being, every waking, restless hour, into Sterling Structures. It wasn't merely a construction company. It was a living, breathing entity, an extension of my very soul, a testament to the sweat and sleepless nights I'd sacrificed. When I first stepped onto a Sterling site at 22, fresh out of North Carolina State with an engineering degree clutched in one hand and a gnawing hunger for success in the other, it was old Silas Sterling who saw past my youth. He was a grizzled titan of the industry, a man whose hands were perpetually stained with earth and mortar, whose booming laugh could drown out a bulldozer. Silas, with his piercing blue eyes and a wisdom born of countless structural challenges, recognized a spark in me, a blend of raw ambition, meticulous precision, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. "You got grit, kid," he'd rumbled on that sweltering August morning, a calloused hand clapping me on the back. "Work hard, you'll go places." He had no earthly idea just how far I would go, or that those places would ultimately include the very throne he occupied. Sterling Structures, in those nascent days, was a modest outfit, a 5-man crew specializing in residential remodels and small-scale commercial build-outs in the burgeoning suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. My initial years were a relentless blur of 16-hour days, mastering every facet of the trade from the ground up. I learned to read blueprints like novels, to estimate costs with uncanny accuracy, to navigate the Byzantine world of permits and inspections. I became fluent in the language of rebar and concrete, plumbing schematics, and electrical wiring. Silas, seeing my insatiable hunger for knowledge, took me under his wing, a true mentor. He taught me the art of the deal, the nuances of client relations, the delicate dance of managing a diverse workforce. Within 6 months, I was promoted to crew chief, leading teams of men twice my age, earning their respect through sheer competence. Within 2 years, I was managing entire projects, from initial concept to final ribbon cutting, turning around troubled sites, and securing lucrative repeat business through my unwavering commitment to quality and efficiency. By my 3rd year, Silas had made me an unofficial partner, entrusting me with the most critical client relationships, the delicate bidding processes for multi-million-dollar contracts, and the very reputation of Sterling Structures. He'd proudly introduce me as my right-hand man, my heir apparent, words that resonated with a promise of a future I believed, implicitly, was mine. My innovations became the engine of Sterling's unprecedented growth. I spearheaded the integration of cutting-edge digital project management systems, migrating us from paper plans to holographic models, slashing lead times and minimizing errors. I streamlined our supply chain, negotiating exclusive deals with top-tier material suppliers, ensuring both quality and cost efficiency. I cultivated ironclad relationships with the most sought-after architects and designers in the region, bringing in projects that were not just profitable, but prestigious. I even pioneered sustainable building practices, incorporating green technologies and recycled materials long before it became fashionable, giving us an unassailable competitive edge in an increasingly eco-conscious market. I worked ungodly hours, fueled by black coffee and an unyielding drive, sacrificing weekends, holidays, and often the precious moments of my personal life. Every beam, every foundation, every meticulously finished facade was infused with my soul, my vision. Under my relentless stewardship, Sterling Structures mushroomed from a scrappy 5-man crew handling backyard additions to a thriving 300 employee enterprise capable of designing and constructing towering office blocks, expansive retail complexes, and state-of-the-art medical facilities that profoundly reshaped the Raleigh cityscape. I wasn't merely a builder of structures. I was the architect of an empire, meticulously constructing a legacy piece by painstaking piece. Silas, his hair now a distinguished silver, his gait a little slower, watched with an undeniable pride, often marveling, "Julian, you've taken this further than I ever dreamed. You're a true visionary, son." That last word, son, always resonated, reinforcing the unspoken understanding that I was family, the rightful successor. My personal life, though often secondary to the demands of Sterling, was nonetheless my anchor. My wife, Amelia, a brilliant landscape architect with an artist's eye for form and function, was my calm in the storm, my intellectual counterpart. She understood my passion, my relentless drive, her grounded sensibility, a perfect counterpoint to my high-stakes, high-stress world. We had built a beautiful home on the verdant outskirts of the city, a quiet haven of warm wood and glass that offered panoramic views of the whispering Carolina forests. Our evenings were sacred simple, shared meals, long, meandering walks with our energetic Labrador, Gus, and conversations about our respective passions, about the future we were meticulously building together. I had no children of my own, but I considered every project, every towering structure we completed, my contribution to the world, my legacy. I was living the American dream, a self-made man, poised to seamlessly inherit and expand the company I had, in all but legal terms, already forged. The first tremor of betrayal, a subtle, disquieting rumble beneath the solid foundation of my life, began about 2 years ago. Silas, my mentor, my de facto father figure, started to show his age more acutely. He'd always been robust, a man of formidable physical presence, but his step became less steady. His once booming voice softened to a murmur. He started taking longer breaks, delegating more, and increasingly talking about the future of Sterling Structures after he was gone. I assumed this meant a smooth, long-discussed transition of ownership to me. After all, I had been running the company, managing its growth, forging its identity for years. Our partnership, though never legally formalized beyond my generous salary and a modest percentage of the company's profits, felt as binding as any contract, sealed by shared sweat and mutual respect. Then came the announcement that shattered my world. Silas was retiring, not gradually, abruptly. He called a special mandatory meeting, his voice unusually grave, his eyes shadowed with an uncharacteristic weariness. He stood before the assembled team, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the people he'd employed for decades, then, finally, resting on me. "It's time," he said, his voice thick with emotion, a strange blend of pride and resignation. "I'm handing over the reins. And the company will be in the very capable hands of my son, Chad Sterling." The name hung in the air like a death knell, echoing with a chilling, sickening finality. Chad, Silas's only child, a trust fund wastrel, a perpetual disappointment, a ghost of a man who drifted through life, perpetually searching for the next self-indulgent pleasure. Chad Sterling, at 30, was a connoisseur of luxury cars, exotic vacations, and short-lived, wildly unprofitable business ventures that hemorrhaged capital. He dabbled in obscure tech startups that imploded with spectacular regularity, invested in artisanal coffee shops that folded in months, and was generally regarded as a cautionary tale among Silas's old guard. He had zero experience in construction, zero understanding of the blood, sweat, and tears that built Sterling Structures. He hadn't lifted a finger in his life unless it was to sign a check from his father's boundless generosity. He had spent his entire life in the deep shadows of his father's success, enjoying the benefits without contributing an ounce of effort or even a modicum of interest. Now, with the wave of his father's hand, he was the new CEO, the inheritor of a kingdom he had never helped build. The shock was a physical blow, visceral and gut-wrenching. It felt as though the very ground had opened beneath me, swallowing my future whole. I stood there, utterly numb, as Silas, oblivious to the tempest raging within me, went on to laud Chad's vision for the future and his fresh perspective. My mind reeled, frantically replaying every 16-hour workday, every sacrifice weekend, every innovation, every single sacrifice I had made. After all I had done, all I had built, nurtured, expanded, to be tossed aside, not for a more qualified individual, not even for a rival, but for an entitled, incompetent dilettante, the injustice was a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth, acrid and suffocating. My own words, the very promise Silas had made to me years ago. "You work hard, you'll go places," now twisted into a cruel, mocking epitaph for my demolished dreams. Chad, predictably, strode into the office the next Monday like a conquering king. A sleek, custom-tailored designer suit replacing his usual resort wear, a self-satisfied, infuriating smirk plastered across his face. He immediately began issuing directives, none of which made any practical sense. "We need to rebrand, Julian," he'd announced during his first strategy meeting, completely oblivious to the fact that I had overseen a major brand refresh just 2 years prior, something modern. Phoenix Ascendant, perhaps. "And we need to outsource our entire labor force, much more efficient." His proposals were ludicrous, dangerous, and utterly detached from the harsh realities of the construction business. He spoke of synergy and disruption and leveraging cutting-edge paradigms with an air of profound ignorance that made my blood boil. He treated me like a loyal but ultimately irrelevant employee, a fossil, a relic of his father's bygone era. My suggestions were ignored, my authority systematically undermined, my meticulously crafted systems slowly dismantled by his haphazard innovations. He began bringing in his buddy's incompetent consultants and shady contractors who promised impossible deadlines and ludicrous profits, all while eyeing Sterling's burgeoning assets like a pack of starving vultures. My frustration simmered, a volatile, barely contained rage beneath a thin veneer of professional courtesy. Amelia, bless her heart, tried to be my unwavering rock. Just be patient, Julian. He'll crash and burn. Silas will see sense. This is just a phase. But I knew Silas better than anyone. He was proud, perhaps too proud of his son to ever admit such a catastrophic error. This wasn't a phase. It was a hostile takeover, bloodless but brutal, a calculated demolition of my future. The tipping point, the moment I knew I had to act, the moment the simmering rage crystallized into cold, calculated resolve, came 6 months after Chad's catastrophic ascension. We had just completed the prestigious Harbor Lights development, a sprawling mixed-use project that was set to become a landmark in the city of Raleigh, triumph of modern engineering and innovative design, a testament to Sterling's capabilities, and a project spearheaded entirely by my team, conceived from my vision. The completion celebration was supposed to be a grand affair, a lavish reception at the newly opened complex, a moment of shared pride. Instead, Chad used the opportunity to announce his new strategic vision for Sterling Structures. He stood on the podium, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, a microphone clutched in his hand, his voice amplified across the cheering crowd. He took full credit for the project's success, casually mentioning my contributions as if I were a glorified foreman. Then, with a flourish, he unveiled his master plan, a massive, highly speculative real estate venture in a volatile, ethically dubious international Marquetta project that reeked of risk and questionable ethics, promising astronomical, impossible returns. He spoke of taking Sterling Structures global, transforming it into a multinational conglomerate, oblivious to the fact that he was overextending the company's capital, committing us to impossible deadlines, and exposing us to immense, potentially catastrophic financial peril. His final flourish was an announcement that he would be bringing in his own chief operations officer, a shadowy figure named Damon Black, an alleged real estate mogul with a notorious reputation for aggressive, often ethically dubious, dealings in the grimy underbelly of international finance. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just incompetence. This was a deliberate act of corporate suicide, driven by Chad's insatiable greed and monumental ego. He was systematically dismantling everything I had built, jeopardizing the livelihoods of our loyal employees, and dragging Silas Sterling's venerable legacy through the mud. That night, alone in my home office, the city lights twinkling in the distance like scattered diamonds, I made a decision. A cold, hard, unyielding decision. I wouldn't just leave. I wouldn't just walk away, tail between my legs. I would deliver the ultimate revenge. I would dismantle Chad's ill-gotten empire, brick by agonizing brick, just as he had dismantled mine. And from the ashes, I would build something new, something better, something irrevocably mine. My first step was to discreetly liquidate every one of my personal assets, moving every penny into untraceable, secure offshore accounts. My years in construction had given me an intimate knowledge of financial structures, legal loopholes, and the labyrinthine world of corporate finance. I knew where the money flowed, where the vulnerabilities lay. My hobby, a clandestine passion for complex data analytics and digital forensics, suddenly became my most potent weapon. I spent weeks working through sleepless nights, meticulously gathering intelligence, documenting Chad's increasingly reckless financial decisions, cataloging his dubious dealings with shady contractors and shell corporations, collecting irrefutable evidence of his systematic mismanagement. I installed hidden recording devices in my office, tiny, undetectable microphones that captured his increasingly erratic and damning pronouncements, his hushed phone calls with Damon Black. I monitored his communications, discovering his clandestine meetings with Black, their whispered plans to siphon off company assets into their own pockets through a complex web of shell corporations and grossly inflated contracts. They were systematically looting Sterling Structures from the inside out, preparing to bleed it dry before declaring bankruptcy and disappearing with their ill-gotten gains. I discovered that Damon Black was no real estate mogul. He was a notorious corporate con artist, a professional asset stripper with a long, dark history of bankrupting companies and leaving a trail of ruined lives and shattered legacies in his wake. Chad was not just incompetent, he was a willing, naive accomplice, blinded by the promise of quick, unimaginable wealth, completely oblivious to Black's true, predatory intentions. They were planning to hollow out Sterling structures, sell off its most valuable assets, prime land holdings, its specialized machinery, its invaluable intellectual property, and disappear before the whole rotten edifice collapsed. The grand international venture, the global conglomerate, was merely a sophisticated smokescreen, a colossal distraction designed to draw attention away from their true, insidious agenda. Living under this veil of icy calm, maintaining the facade of the loyal, somewhat beleaguered employee, was a torment. Every meeting with Chad, every feigned nod of agreement, every professional smile I offered him was a performance, an agonizing ballet of deceit. Amelia, ever perceptive, sensed the profound change in me, the hardened edge in my voice, the distant, haunted gaze in my eyes. She tried to penetrate my silent resolve, to break through the impenetrable wall I had erected around myself, but I couldn't tell her. Not yet. The stakes were too high, the plan too intricate, the risk of exposure too great. This was a war I had to fight alone, in the shadows, until the time was ripe for the crushing reveal. The centerpiece of my revenge would be a carefully orchestrated project, a monument to Chad's boundless arrogance and my meticulous planning. I proposed a new, ambitious project, the Skyline Gateway Towers, a magnificent twin-tower residential complex that would be a beacon of modern design, a marvel of sustainable living, and a symbol of Sterling's supposed resurgence. It was a project of immense scale and complexity, precisely the kind of challenge that would appeal to Chad's bloated ego and blind him to the hidden traps I had painstakingly laid. Chad naturally swallowed the bait whole, convinced this would be his ultimate triumph, the crowning glory of his visionary leadership. "This is it, Julian," he declared, eyes gleaming with avarice, slapping me on the back. "The project that proves my genius. Make it happen." I meticulously designed every single aspect of the Skyline Gateway Towers project, not just for its architectural grandeur, but for its role as the ultimate instrument of his downfall. I embedded numerous trapdoors in the project's financials, grossly inflated budgets for certain construction phases, deliberately complex and convoluted payment schedules for specific, seemingly legitimate vendors, and highly specialized material orders from preferred suppliers that were, in fact, shell companies I secretly controlled. I created a labyrinthine web of legally binding contracts with these shell companies, stipulating crippling penalties for non-performance and highly specific, almost impossible to meet quality standards, all designed to trigger massive financial liabilities. Every digital invoice, every progress report, every project milestone document, every financial projection I submitted to Chad was a carefully constructed piece of a grand, intricate illusion designed to appear utterly legitimate. But in reality, each document contained embedded digital triggers designed to divert funds into untraceable offshore accounts upon Chad's signature, creating a devastating financial hemorrhage from which Sterling would never recover. This was classic, sophisticated financial fraud, executed with the precision of a master builder, turning Chad's greed into his own undoing. I also forged a clandestine alliance with a few key, loyal employees, veteran foremen, experienced project managers, even a few long-standing administrative staff who had witnessed Chad's destructive reign firsthand and were secretly disgusted by his actions. They were the silent architects of my revenge, my eyes and ears inside the belly of the beast, feeding me crucial internal information, confirming my suspicions, and ensuring that my engineered traps were perfectly set. Their unwavering loyalty to Silas Sterling and the company's true, honorable legacy made them invaluable allies in my silent war. As the Skyline Gateway Towers project progressed, Chad's arrogance grew unchecked, cancerous, and insatiable. He began to boast openly about the project's imminent success, flaunting his newfound, ill-gotten wealth, convinced he was on the cusp of becoming a global titan. He brazenly ignored my warnings about escalating costs, about the impracticality of some of his outlandish demands, dismissing my concerns as old-fashioned skepticism or lack of vision. Damon Black, his shadowy associate, began to siphon off increasingly large sums of money through fraudulent invoices and shell companies, believing they were untouchable, their scheme flawless. They were digging their own graves, and I was quietly, meticulously, filling them with the quick-drying concrete of their own greed. The climax was set for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Skyline Gateway Towers, A lavish, ostentatious affair meant to attract even more gullible investors and cement Sterling's new, global image in the eyes of the public. It was Chad's moment of perceived triumph, his final, public declaration of victory. But it would be his spectacular, humiliating downfall. The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, a crisp autumn morning. The construction site, usually a symphony of organized chaos, was transformed, adorned with banners, a makeshift stage, and rows of pristine white chairs for dignitaries, investors, and media. Chad, resplendent in a custom-tailored, ludicrously expensive suit, beamed with self-importance, soaking in the pre-ceremony buzz. Damon Black stood by his side, a predatory glint in his eyes, a thin, almost invisible smirk playing on his lips. I stood at the edge of the assembled crowd, a seemingly loyal employee, my expression unreadable, watching the meticulously orchestrated spectacle unfold with a chilling detachment. Chad stepped to the podium, basking in the polite applause. He adjusted the microphone, his voice resonating with an unearned authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice echoing across the vast construction site, "today marks a new era for Sterling Structures. The Skyline Gateway Towers will not merely be buildings. They will be a testament to our vision, our innovation, our boundless future." He launched into a rambling, hyperbolic speech, describing the project in grandiose terms, taking full, undeserved credit for its conception, and lavishing praise on Damon Black as his brilliant strategic partner. Then, as he prepared to activate the ceremonial golden shovel, his hand hovering over the gleaming spade, I made my move. Not with a shout, not with a dramatic reveal, but with the quiet, precise click of a single, almost imperceptible button on a small, disguised tablet in my palm. A series of pre-programmed actions, meticulously timed and triggered by my command, instantly went live. First, the massive digital screen behind Chad, meant to display sleek architectural renderings of the towers, flickered erratically. Then, it displayed something else entirely. Not glossy images, but a meticulously organized damning spreadsheet. Sterling Structures, project overheads and diverted funds, internal forensic audit. The rows detailed Chad's extravagant personal expenses masked as corporate cost. The grossly inflated invoices from Damon Black's shell companies, the colossal sums funneled into untraceable offshore accounts. The numbers were staggering, irrefutable, undeniable. A collective gasp swept through the stunned crowd. Chad's face, once beaming with self-congratulation, drained of all color, turning a sickly green. Damon Black, sensing the imminent catastrophe, nervously tugged at his impeccably tied silk tie, his predatory eyes darting frantically. Next, a series of unedited emails and text messages, projected in agonizingly clear detail, flashed across the screen. Not official company communications, but private, damning exchanges between Chad and Damon, detailing their plans to strip the company clean, to bleed it dry, to vanish before the inevitable collapse. Their true, insidious intentions, laid bare for all to see, their avarice exposed to the harsh light of public scrutiny. The sound of muffled gasps and outraged murmurs rippled through the bewildered audience. Then, the final, most devastating blow. The screen showed a live feed from various Sterling Structures' corporate bank accounts. As the audience watched in stunned, horrified silence, the balances began to plummet. Not a gradual decline, but a rapid, accelerating plunge. The crippling penalties for non-performance from my secretly controlled shell companies were being triggered. The funds from the fraudulent invoices, meticulously tracked and categorized, were now being automatically diverted, not into Chad's or Black's criminal accounts, but into a series of secure escrow accounts controlled by a renowned independent forensic accounting firm I had secretly engaged months prior. The financial traps I had so carefully engineered were springing shut one after another, systematically stripping Sterling Structures of its capital, leaving it vulnerable, exposed, and on the brink of financial ruin, all due to Chad's reckless and criminal mismanagement. Chad looked at the screen, then at me, his eyes wide with a desperate, animalistic fury, a frantic, trapped expression. "What have you done, Julian?" he shrieked, his voice raw with pure, unadulterated panic, completely devoid of his earlier arrogance. "I've done what you couldn't, Chad," I said, my voice calm, unwavering, resonating with a chilling authority that cut through the uproar. My words were precise, each syllable a hammer blow of truth. I saved Sterling Structures. From you, at that precise moment, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer, a piercing crescendo that signaled the final act of this corporate drama. They had been prearranged, timed to perfection. Police cruisers and unmarked cars swarmed the site, federal agents spilling out, moving with swift, professional precision. They surrounded Chad and Damon Black, cutting off any attempt at escape. Chad Sterling, Damon Black, an agent announced, her voice cutting through the stunned silence, amplified by a bullhorn. You are under arrest for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. You have the right to remain silent. Chad tried to resist, flailing wildly. His earlier composure shattered, but he was quickly subdued by two strong agents. Damon Black, ever the conniving opportunist, attempted to melt into the now chaotic crowd, but he was intercepted by two burly agents who had been positioned specifically for him. The groundbreaking ceremony devolved into a chaotic scene of arrests, flashing cameras, bewildered onlookers, and the sickening realization of a massive betrayal. The local news exploded with the story, screaming headlines dominating every channel. Construction giant crumbles. CEO arrested in massive fraud scandal. Sterling Structures on the brink of collapse as founder's son charged. My name, once simply synonymous with competence and growth, was now tragically, publicly linked to betrayal and disaster. But the truth, the raw, unvarnished truth, meticulously unearthed and presented by me, would soon emerge, setting the record straight. I, Julian Thorne, was immediately hailed as a whistleblower, a hero who had risked everything: my career, my reputation, even my personal safety, to expose the corruption within the very heart of the company. I presented the overwhelming, irrefutable evidence I had meticulously collected, the comprehensive forensic audit reports, the damning audio recordings of their conspiratorial conversations, the irrefutable digital trails linking Chad and Black to every fraudulent transaction. The loyal employees I had confided in came forward, corroborating my claims, painting a vivid picture of Chad's destructive incompetence and Damon Black's predatory schemes, revealing the depths of their calculated avarice. The legal battle was swift and brutal. Chad Sterling and Damon Black faced long, well-deserved prison sentences, their vast criminal enterprise exposed and dismantled. Sterling Structures, however, was in critical condition, its reputation in tatters, its finances crippled by Chad's recklessness. The board, shocked, humiliated, and desperate to salvage what remained, unanimously offered me the CEO position, along with complete control over the company's restructuring and a majority stake. I accepted, but on my terms. I would not just rebuild Sterling, I would remake it, purge it of all its past shadows, and forge it into something stronger, something built on unwavering integrity and a renewed sense of purpose. Amelia and I, sadly, eventually separated. The weight of the betrayal, the chilling secrecy I had to maintain, and the sheer emotional toll of the ordeal had created an irreparable rift between us. She couldn't reconcile the calculating, secretive man I had become during my revenge with the open, honest partner she had married. It was a painful loss, a personal tragedy amidst the corporate triumph, but a necessary one. I accepted it with a heavy heart, knowing that sometimes even the deepest love cannot withstand the seismic shifts of profound betrayal, the fundamental alteration of trust. I poured my heart and soul into rebuilding Sterling Structures, now renamed Thorne Legacy Construction. I rehired the loyal employees who had stood by me, brought in a new ethically driven executive team, and implemented the most rigorous financial controls and transparency measures the industry had ever seen. We rebranded, not as a flash of ego, but as a symbolic statement of our renewed commitment to ethical practice and uncompromising quality. The name itself was a promise, and a testament to the hard-won integrity that now defined us. Thorne Legacy Construction emerged from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more respected than ever before. Our new motto, subtly ingrained in every employee, every project, every business decision, was built on trust, forged in integrity, defended with vigilance. We didn't just construct buildings, we built relationships, nurtured reputations, and secured futures. The scandal, ironically, had inadvertently burnished my own reputation, making me a sought-after speaker on corporate ethics and fraud prevention. I was turning my pain into purpose, my personal agony into professional mastery, becoming a voice for ethical leadership in a cutthroat industry. My life wasn't a fairy tale ending, not in the saccharine, easily digestible sense. It was real. It was complex. It was a testament to the fact that integrity, once shattered, can be meticulously rebuilt, and that the profound peace you find in living your truth is a treasure no one, no matter how cunning or cruel, can ever steal. The scars of betrayal lingered, a constant, dull ache beneath the surface, a reminder of the darkness I had faced. The sting of being so utterly deceived by Silas, the man I had revered, and the profound disappointment in Chad still resonated, an echo of a life irrevocably altered. But I had rebuilt. I had reclaimed my worth, not through vengeance alone, but through the unwavering pursuit of justice and the meticulous reconstruction of a life built entirely on my own terms. I bought a new home, a modest, modern house with clean lines and expansive windows that let in the warm Carolina light, its spaces infused with a quiet sense of calm. It was a space that felt truly mine, unburdened by the ghosts of past betrayals, a sanctuary for new beginnings. I filled it with meaningful things, with quiet moments of reflection, and with the unwavering knowledge that I had faced the deepest betrayal imaginable and emerged, not entirely unscathed, but irrevocably unbroken, fundamentally transformed. I had learned, in the crucible of my experience, that loyalty without respect is merely exploitation, that trust, once shattered, is not easily restored, but that integrity, once proven, is an unshakable foundation, a bedrock that withstands any storm. Silas Sterling had believed his legacy would endure through his bloodline, through a son who was utterly undeserving. He had chosen blood over competence, familial obligation over unwavering integrity. But I, Julian Thorne, had proven him wrong. I had not just built his empire, I had rebuilt my own, stronger, more enduring, and founded on the unyielding principles of self-respect and professional dignity. The true legacy wasn't a name passed down through blood, but a reputation forged in fire, built on unparalleled competence, and upheld by unwavering integrity. And that, I realized, was the ultimate revenge. Not just their downfall, spectacular and public as it was, but my triumph. Not just their loss, but my profound, quiet peace in knowing I had built something that would truly last, a monument to resilience, integrity, and the undeniable truth that some people will always choose to build, even when others are determined to destroy. If you work hard, you will go places. But sometimes, the most important place you go is away from those who take your hard work for granted to build a future that is truly, unequivocally, and honorably your own. The vindication I felt was not a fleeting burst of triumph, but a deep, abiding sense of justice served, of a balance restored. And in that, I found a peace that no amount of money or stolen empire could ever buy.